Assalamu alaikum students, welcome back to another video. Today we will be solving Cambridge IGCSE Physics Paper 4 Variant 42 of May-June 2021. Question 1. Figure 1.1 shows a sealed weather balloon which is stationary in still air. State whether the overall density of the balloon and its instruments is greater than, less than or the same as the density of the surrounding air. So they have told us that the balloon is stationary in still air. This means that the density of the balloon and its instruments must be the same as the density of the surrounding air, which allows it to be stationary. So same density. At night the gas inside the balloon cools. The pressure of the air outside the balloon remains the same. State whether the balloon rises, falls or remains stationary. So the balloon will fall. And why is that? Because as the balloon cools, the volume decreases, due to which the density increases, which causes the balloon to fall. So volume decreases, due to which density increases. When the density becomes greater than the density of the surrounding air, the balloon will fall. An object is released from the balloon. It starts at rest and eventually reaches a constant speed. On the axis of figure 1.2, sketch a speed time graph to show this motion. Okay, so when it is initially falling, it will be equal to the acceleration of gravity, which is 9.8, and then it will reach a constant speed as they have told us. So the graph will be something like this. At this point, it reaches constant speed. State the values of the initial acceleration and the final acceleration of the object. So as I just mentioned, the initial acceleration will be equal to the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 or 10 meters per second squared, and the final acceleration at this point, when the speed is constant, the acceleration will be 0. Question 2. Define the moment of a force. So we know that moment is force times the perpendicular distance from the pivot or from the point where the source is, where the force is. Perpendicular distance from pivot. Figure 2.1 shows an object of negligible weight. The object is in equilibrium. The object is free to rotate about its pivot P. Calculate the value of force F. So they have told us that the object is in equilibrium, which means that the total moment of the object must be 0. So we have two forces, one is force F and one is the force due to this mass. So we will take the moment due to both forces and put them equal to each other. So one force, you will have force F times 12 centimeters, because this is the pivot, and the distance and the perpendicular distance from the pivot to the force is 12 centimeters. So we have F times 12. This must be equals to the force due to this mass, and the distance, perpendicular distance, is 20 centimeters from the pivot. So 50, we'll have to convert this into a force, which means the weight, which will become 500 times 20. So F, you will get 10,000 over 12. So your answer will be rounded off to 830 newtons. Part C. Describe an experiment involving vertical forces to show that there is no net moment on an object in equilibrium. You may draw a diagram in the space provided. Okay, so we can use a conventional example of a beam. So this is, we can draw a beam pivoted at the center, and we can draw two weights, let's call it W1, and one at this end, let's call it W2. So for them to be in equilibrium, the total moment must be equal. So the distance, let's give it 10 centimeters, and this distance, let's call it 20 centimeters. So in order to be in equilibrium, W1 has a weight of, let's say, 10 newtons, and W2 then must have a weight of 5 newtons. So in this diagram we can see that the total moment due to both of these weights is equal to each other. So 10 times 10 would be equals to 20 times 5, and since they are both equal, so it means that they are in equilibrium. Question 3. Figure 3.1 shows water flowing at very slow speed over a cliff edge. The water falls 15 meters onto the rocks below. Show that the velocity of the water when it strikes the rocks is 17 meters per second. Okay, so from the top, when the water falls, the energy is being converted from gravitational potential energy to the kinetic energy. Assuming that none of the energy is being lost, so we can put those two equations equal to each other. So the gravitational potential energy is equals to the kinetic energy. So when we simplify this equation, m and m gets cancelled. We need to calculate the v, which is speed. So the equation we get is v is equals to under root of 2gh, where g is the gravitational field strength, which is 10, and height is the vertical height, which is 15. So just use your calculator and plug these values, so you will get 17 meters per second rounded off. 30 kilograms of water falls over the cliff edge every second. Calculate the force exerted by the rocks on the falling water. Ignore any splashing. Okay, so in order to calculate the force, we can use this formula. Force is equal to change in momentum over time. So momentum is mass into velocity. So mass we have 30 kilograms, and velocity we calculated, which was 17.32, and time they have told us every second, so time is 1. So your answer will come out to be 520 newtons. Question 4. Pollen particles are mixed into a liquid. They are seen to move when observed through a microscope. Describe this movement. So we know that whenever pollen particles are mixed into a liquid, they have a random movement. Random or haphazard or irregular, whatever word you can recall. Explain this movement in terms of the particles of liquid and the pollen particles. So we know that the pollen particles are much larger than the water particles, and when the water particles and the pollen particles, when they collide, it gives rise to random motion, because the collisions are uneven due to the difference in size. So you can write this. Uneven collision give rise to random motion. Part B. Medical professionals sometimes rub ethanol over the skin of a patient. Ethanol evaporates readily at room temperature and has a high specific latent heat of vaporization. State whether the patient experiences heating, cooling, or neither at the site where the ethanol is applied. Explain your answer. So the patient would experience a cooling effect because when the ethanol evaporates, it also takes with it thermal energy. It is taken away from the patient. So obviously when thermal energy is taken away from the skin, you will feel a cooling sensation. And we know that whenever a liquid evaporates, the particles with the highest energy, they leave the surface. So obviously when high energy particles will leave the surface, lesser energy particles would be present, and due to which you will feel a cooling effect. State any effect on the rate of evaporation of ethanol when a fan blows air over the patient's skin. So blowing air would increase the rate of evaporation. Question 5. A machine delivers a hot drink in a plastic cup which is uncomfortably hot to hold. Figure 5.1 shows the cup with the hot drink. Figure 5.2a shows the cup with the hot drink and a holder for the sides of the cup. Figure 5.2b shows a cross section through the holder. The holder is made from two strong paper cylinders separated by a wavy piece of strong paper to make air gaps. Explain how using the holder makes it more comfortable to hold the cup. So the holder, it reduces the conduction, which is the transfer of thermal energy from the hot drink to the hand. So it basically acts as a barrier between which reduces the thermal conduction. And another reason is that since there are also air gaps present, and we know that air is a good insulator, so this also allows less heat to be transferred. A student carried out experiments on the cooling of the hot drink described in part A with and without the holder in place. He finds that the holder only reduces the rate of cooling slightly. Suggest and explain another action that reduces the rate of cooling more effectively. So if we place a lid on top of the drink, so this will allow less heat to escape through convection and also through evaporation. State the method of thermal energy transfer from a star through the vacuum of space. So we know this is through radiation, because convection and conduction require a medium, and through vacuum there is no medium, so only radiation. Figure 6.1 shows a ray of green light passing through a prism. A ray of blue light is directed towards the prism on the same path as a ray of green light. Figure 6.1, draw the path of the blue light through and out of the prism. So we know that blue light has a shorter wavelength, due to which it will get refracted more. So the initial path will be same, and then it will get diffracted greater with a greater angle. So this is your blue light. wavelength of the blue light in air is 4.8 times 10 to the power minus 7 meters. Calculate the frequency of the blue light. So we have this formula, V is equals to F lambda. V is the speed of light. Frequency we have to calculate. Lambda, which is the wavelength, is this value. So you just need to put this in a calculator and your answer will come out to be 6.3 in 10 to the power 14 hertz. Question 7. Figure 7.1 shows two magnets and the gap between the north pole of one magnet and the south pole of the other magnet. On figure 7.1, draw three lines to show the pattern and direction of the magnetic field in the gap. So we know that magnetic fields travel from north to south. It will be something like this. Figure 7.2 is a repeat of figure 7.1 showing the two magnets. On figure 7.2, draw the position of a plotting compass needle when it comes to rest in the gap between the north pole and the south pole. So we know that the magnetic fields are from north to south. So a plotting compass would be in this direction. Explain why the needle comes to rest in this position. So this is because the needle it aligns itself with the magnetic field, which is from north to south. And since they are unlike poles, they attract each other. The north pole attracted by the south pole. Describe a method of demagnetizing a bar magnet. So here you can mention any method that you remember. It could be heating or striking with a hammer, or even placing in an alternating current. So I'm going to go with the heating method. Heat magnet with magnet. So only heating would not demagnetize it. You will have to lay the magnet in an east-west direction. Similarly, if you were to hammer the magnet, the hammer must also be lying in an east-west direction. Question 8. Two identical radioactive sources emit alpha particles and gamma rays in two vacuum tubes. Figure 8.1 shows two electrically charged plates on either side of one of the vacuum tubes. Write the symbol alpha once in table 8.1 to indicate any deflection of the alpha particles. Write the symbol gamma once in table 8.1 to indicate any deflection of the gamma rays. So we know that alpha particles are positively charged, so they would be deflected towards the negative plate. So something like this. So it will be towards the bottom of the page, alpha particles. And gamma rays, well, gamma rays have no charge, they are neutral, so there would be no deflection. This is for the gamma rays. Figure 8.2 shows the poles of a very strong magnet on either side of the other vacuum tube. Write the symbol alpha once to indicate any deflection of the alpha particles. Write the symbol gamma once to indicate any deflection of the gamma rays. So here you will have to use your left hand rule. So your thumb is the force or the motion, direction of motion, and your index finger is the direction of the field, and your middle finger is the direction of the current. So the direction of the magnetic field is always from north to south. And this is your motion. So when you use your Fleming's left hand rule, following these rules, the deflection that you will get for the alpha particles would be into the page. And similarly, like to the previous part, since the gamma rays are neutral, they have no charge, so they will experience no deflection. Figure 8.3 shows a simple direct current electric motor with a split ring commutator. State and explain the direction of rotation of the coil as seen from point X. Okay, so this is the direction of magnetic field. This is the flow of your current. So once again, using the left hand rule, your thumb would indicate the direction of motion, which you will see will be upwards at this point. So when there is an upward force on the left, it must be traveling in a clockwise direction. Explanation, you can say that there is force on left side wire in fact you should write there is an upward force the coil rotates to 90 degrees from the position shown. State what happens to the movement in this position. So we know when the coil is vertically upwards, when it is at 90 degrees to the magnets, at that point there will be zero moment or no moment. The coil is rotated through 180 degrees from the position shown. By considering the forces on the coil, explain how the split ring commutator enables the motor to turn continuously. So the split ring commutator, it reverses the direction of the current in the coil, and due to which the forces on the wires in this new position are the same as it was initially. So it reverses in the same direction like it was in the beginning. Upward force on the left side, downward force on the right side. Question 9. Figure 9.1 shows a circuit. On figure 9.1, draw two clearly labeled arrows to show the direction of the electron flow and direction of the conventional current. So we know that conventional current is always from positive to negative terminal. So this is your conventional current, call it C, and electron flow is obviously in the opposite direction. So this is your electron flow. The current in the motor is 13 amperes. The charge on an electron is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulombs. Calculate the number of electrons that pass through the motor every second. So first we'll have to calculate the charge. So the charge is equal to the current, since we are talking about 1 second. This is your charge. We have to calculate the number of electrons. So we'll divide it by the charge on each electron. 13 divided by 1.6 in the power minus 19. So the number of electrons that we get is this much. Question 10. Figure 10.1 shows the potential difference current graph for a circuit component K. Calculate the resistance of component K when the current in it is 4 milliamperes. So at 4 milliamperes, it is at this point. So the value of potential difference here is 9.2 volts. So we have this formula, V is equals to IR. V is 9.2. Resistance we have to calculate, and current is 4 milliamperes, so we'll have to convert it into amperes first. So your answer you get is 2300 ohms. Figure 10.2 shows a circuit containing component K. At low temperature, component K has a much greater resistance than resistor R. At high temperature, component K has a much smaller resistance than resistor R. Student, explain the effect on the lamp when the temperature changes from very low to very high. Refer to the voltage at point X in your explanation. So we have to tell what happens on the what happens to the lamp. So the brightness of the lamp increases. So brightness increases, and why is that? So as the temperature increases from a low to high, the resistance of this component it decreases, because we need to realize that this component is a thermistor. So when the temperature increases, the resistance decreases. So when the resistance across component K decreases, it means that the resistance across resistor R will increase. And since resistance and potential difference are directly proportional, so as the resistance across R increases, potential difference also increases, which causes the lamp to grow brighter. So just write it in words. As temperature increases, resistance of R increases, due to which PD of R also increases, causing greater brightness of lamp. State the name of component K. So this is a thermistor. Question 11 and the final question of this paper. A student investigates a radioactive substance in a laboratory. Figure 11.1 is a graph showing the count rate detected as the substance decays for 7.5 minutes. The background radiation is 20 counts per minute. Determine the half-life of the substance. Okay, so first we'll have to remove the background radiation. So we have an initial value of 220. So it means the original count rate of the substance is 200 when you minus the background. So the half-life would be at 100 plus 20 due to the background radiation. So let's check it. 120. Okay, so the value here is 2.4 minutes. So half-life is 2.4 minutes. Calculate the count rate detected at time 9.6 minutes. So it means after 4 half-lives. So after 4 half-lives, you will have, so we'll have to first minus. So after 200 you will have 100, then 50, then 25, and then 12.5. So the count rate detected time 9.6 minutes would be 12.5, but remember you will have to add the background count as well. So it would be approximately 33 counts per minute. The substance emits alpha particles and gamma rays. The student suggests that it is safe to store the substance in a plastic container of thickness 2 millimeters. Student explain whether the student's suggestion is correct. So the plastic container of thickness 2 millimeters, it would be enough for to prevent the penetration of the alpha particles. However, it is not enough for the gamma rays. So gamma rays will penetrate so it won't be enough. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our paper. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and like always, I will see you later.